Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week, we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option, and that's where I'm posting all of my online recruiting content. The link is also in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. I'm also appearing on the Horns Down podcast, Hall of Fame podcast with Jason Watkins on a weekly basis. We do a show either Thursday or Friday night, live stream, talking about OU season, talking about college football, talking about OU recruiting. So please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com, search for Sooners 360, and click subscribe to be notified of when those live streams occur. You can also, if you go to the channel, the Sooners 360 channel, you can go to the live section and you can look at previous recordings. This is episode 132, O'Neal Decommits and the BBQU weekend. So let's jump into the recruiting news, and let's talk about the verbal commitment first before we get to the quarterback situation. So OU got a verbal commitment from Missouri running back Decommits Walker. He visited last weekend. He was the only high school visitor that weekend. OU did have JUCO prospect Josiah Jefferson. Tony Jefferson's brother was also in town, but Decommits was the only 2026 high school prospect on campus. And apparently that focus and attention won the day. He's about 5'11" or 6 foot, 210, 205 pounds, can probably carry 215, 220 easily. He's a power back. He runs through trash well. He has a good burst on him. Some folks seem to think that he has a little bit of that power, quick acceleration game like Samaje Perine. I think that's probably a high ceiling comp. But he definitely, he does a good job waiting for his blockers to set up. He does a good job being patient and then exploding through any gaps he sees. He's hard to bring down, runs through arm tackles. I think he's ranked around 300, 350 in the nation, depending upon how the rankings shake out after this On3 Rivals merger acquisition takes place. But I think he's a little underranked. I think he's probably right around 200 would be where I would put him. He's a very good back. I think he's a natural complement to what Torrey Blaylock provides in terms of a running back from last year's class. Torrey's a little smaller, home run speed, very good receiver. Decommits, he looks like he's a good receiver on the limited highlights that flashed that ability. But I think Decommits could easily be a 3-down back for the Sooners. I like this option for OU, and with having lost Jonathan Hatton. The other running back OU was recruiting, Ryan Estrada, was supposed to visit OU midweek. Either OU canceled that or he canceled that after hearing Walker verbal. And he immediately turned around and committed to Minnesota, which is odd because I was led to believe that he had opportunities at Alabama and Michigan still available to him. So that's the running back verbal commitment news. Like I said, nice addition. I think Decommits will be a composite 4-star once all of this ranking silliness shakes out. I think he has a chance to have a really productive senior year. And if scouted correctly by the services, I think he's a top 200 type talent. All right, so I've been pushing off QB news, giving you guys no updates for weeks. We finally have news. So Jaden O'Neal decommitted last night. You could read his letter on Twitter if you want, explaining why. He just visited FSU. I think an FSU verbal commitment is likely, makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure that's a great offensive fit for Jaden O'Neal's skill set, but I'm not Jaden O'Neal's recruiting strategist or coordinator. So, I have had a chance to talk to Jaron O'Neal a little bit yesterday before they made their decision. Had just got some feedback and feelings from him. So I think it was just time for them to separate from OU. And I think for OU, it was also time to separate. They need to make sure that Bentley understands that he's the only quarterback in the class. And if that was one of the things holding him back from taking the final plunge into a commitment, then OU needed to make that move. They needed to resolve this. Also, if O'Neal was feeling ambivalent about his OU commitment, you don't want him at the barbecue event for that. You don't want that energy. It's hard to be enthusiastic when you're feeling like you're about to decommit. So why bring that energy to the BBQU weekend? So Bo Bentley's at the Elite 11 finals. He had a pretty good event. He was the first day he was somewhere in the top 10, depending upon whose evaluation you believe. But the second day he had a fantastic day in an accuracy pro event, and he was pretty much the number 2 or number 3 quarterback that day. And then 7-on-7 wise, he did pretty well. He had 4 touchdowns on 4 touchdown drives. Completed 2/3, 70% of his passes, and he had 1 pick. A couple players had better days, but going into the Elite 11, he did not get an Elite 11 invitation out of the combine that occurred in, I believe, Austin. The one he skipped the Austin one because he was visiting. He was visiting, I think he was visiting Florida. Took an unofficial to Florida. So he did the one down in, I believe, Miami, and he didn't get an invite out of that right out of the gate. So he was a player that they added later. So if you wanted to say what his ranking was prior to the Elite 11 tournament, it was probably like 15, 16. They invite closer to like 20 kids. But after the Elite 11 event, Bo was either the 4th best quarterback there, 5th best quarterback there, depending upon who you want to evaluate. So I would imagine that the services that hadn't moved Bentley up are about to move Bo Bentley up. So his ranking is on every network is going to surpass Jaden's, if that's important to you. And the other big thing is now that Elite 11 is done, and it was done yesterday, so that would be Thursday. So he flew home to Texas. They did a morning session so all the kids could fly home. So he flew home to Texas. He's back in Texas today. So the hope, I think, for both LSU and OU fans is that a Bentley decision is coming sooner rather than later. Now, there's some internet rumors going around that OU is trying to bring Bo Bentley back on campus for the BBQU event this weekend. I don't know how possible that is or how likely that is. Obviously, if that does happen, that would be a fantastic sign for OU in terms of Bentley's. I mean, it's a de facto commitment if he was to show up in Norman for the BBQU event. And again, just for everybody's knowledge, this is the last weekend for official visits. We had a dead period after this weekend, and there are no more official visits allowed until the first football weekend in September. So you've got 8 weeks of no in-person visits, either in-home or on campus. Obviously, communication, Zoom, phone calls, all these things can take place. But in terms of actual in-person activity, there's nothing that can go on there. So if OU is to get a last in-person moment with Bentley, I think that would trend well for the Sooners. But I also see that logistically, that's about, Salina to Norman is probably, 6-7 hour drive, something like that. I'm guessing. I don't know that off the top of my head. So I don't know. I think it's a little optimistic to think that after traveling and being in LA for 3 days, working out with all the other quarterbacks in the country, that he's ready to just hop in a car and come to Norman. But we'll see. But I'm recording this Friday morning around 9 a.m. Eastern, trying to give you guys the latest information as possible. And fortunately, I was able to get the Jaden O'Neal news in this podcast before recording. So that's where we stand. But it's Bo Bentley or bust. I don't see any way that Jaden O'Neal finds his way back to Norman if OU loses Bo Bentley to LSU. What does OU do from there? That's a great question, and I don't think anybody really has an answer. And we won't hit that. We won't hit that story until Bo Bentley has chosen LSU. So there are decisions coming, decisions scheduled. Let's just recap that. A couple of these were existing ones, but we've got some new ones. So first, Danny Odom, the Florida cornerback, is deciding on 6/23. That is probably an OU Clemson battle. Florida might be in there a little bit. Florida's on kind of a hot run in recruiting, but they just flipped top cornerback from Nebraska. So I'm not sure that Odom is in their plans any longer. So it looks like OU Clemson. If you force me to pick, I'm still working off the big momentum, the general feeling in Norman that they had secured, that they had a big lead for Danny Odom coming out of his official visit. So we'll see. Dallas Dickerson, the wide receiver from Georgia, is deciding on 6/24. That's an OU Georgia Tech battle. Again, OU felt like they did everything they needed to secure his commitment on his visit June 6th. A couple of predictions have gone in for OU already, so we'll see where that stands. Then on 6/26, Desmond Green, the big offensive guard from South Carolina, is deciding. If it's not UF, I think it's probably OU. On that same day, Craig Dandridge, the wide receiver from Georgia, is announcing, and we'll discuss him in a bit when I get to the players about this weekend. Also, I skipped it. Will Conroy obviously decommitted from OU, the center prospect from IMG, who is originally from Ohio. He went with UNC. I think after OU got Noah Best officially in the loop, once he committed, that meant that OU still wanted Will Conroy, but were not really in a position where they were going to fight for his spot. That if somebody offered him a better NIL deal, OU was probably prepared to say, "Yeah, we're walking away. We're walking away from that. There's other prospects, and I'll talk about one of them. We've got other guys coming in, and we can always evaluate offensive linemen this fall when we have some senior tape and grab a guy if we want." So I think that's a little bit of where OU was on that. Back to the decisions upcoming. Deacon Schmidt on 6/28. He's announcing, and it looks like Colorado or maybe Bama is OU's competition. I like OU to win out here. And then Tyler Ruxer is again announcing on 7/7. He recently canceled an official visit last weekend. We'll see if he makes an official visit this weekend. But it looks like OU is way out in front there. So I like OU to add Tyler Ruxer on 7/7. Players were still waiting on dates for guys that are still in play, guys that have officially visited. So Braxton Lindsey, the linebacker from Arkansas, I believe he's got a visit this weekend, and and obviously that's his last visit. So I think we could hear an announcement date from him right after this weekend, once the dead period comes into play. I still think OU has a lead there. Nothing has indicated that the other visits have put a big dent in that. So I think OU's still trending for Braxton Lindsey. Middle linebacker prospect I really like, 4-star guy. Would be a big addition at the linebacker room to go along with Ja'Cory Smith and maybe another player. But we'll get to this weekend in just a sec. Still waiting to hear about Davion Gross, the near 5-star talent from Frisco Lone Star, wide receiver who visited, 6'3", 190 pounds, elite-looking kind of guy. And then Jaden Petit, the big wide receiver from Florida, 6'4", 205, 210. Florida's added some additional wide receivers, so they look like they're out of that mix. But, FSU, maybe Miami will make a run there. Where Petit is in the pecking order is also kind of questionable. So those 3 players are the guys we're waiting on dates from that I think we could hear something in a couple of weeks about a decision from them. And I think OU is definitely in play for Gross, definitely in play for Lindsey. And I think Petit might depend on what happens this weekend. So we'll see where that goes. All right, let's jump to the visitor preview. So I'm just going to go through everybody that's visiting and give you just some quick opinions and background on that, just so you've got a weekend preview that you can listen to tonight, tomorrow, whatever you're doing, maybe over the weekend, maybe Saturday morning. So the first, I'm going to just list the verbal commitments initially. So Nick Jandro is visiting, the Cheetah prospect from Arizona. Obviously, he's visiting with his brother, Bo. Brian Harris, the defensive tackle verbal from Florida. He's moved his official visits around to attend the same weekend as some other defensive linemen from Florida, who we'll get to. Ryder Mix, the longtime OU commitment, OU legacy, he's visiting. As you've heard on this podcast, I feel like Mix and Ruxer would be an excellent tight end combo. Kind of reshape the tight end room, reload that from a talent and fit position. And the uncommitted guys, let's start with the 2 Florida defensive ends. First one is DeAnthony Lafayette from Florida. He's a 3-star with elite film. He's 6'1", 6'1.5", 235, 240. Had nearly 17 sacks, tackles for loss numbers were high. He's down to, I think, LSU, Miami, and OU. So you could say he's the comp you could go with is either R. Mason Thomas or Nick Benito. And they're all from Florida, so choose whichever one, choose which one you like in terms of a comp. He has a huge wingspan for being 6'2". I imagine his wingspan is probably in the 6'5", 6'6" range. He just gets to the quarterback. He has excellent pass rush moves, counter moves. He has a plan to get to the quarterback. He's constantly in the backfield making, if he's not making the play, he's disrupting everything so someone else is making the play. We'll see where OU fits here, but adding him to the long wingspan, potential big defensive end, and Matthew Nelson would be interesting. But we do have other defensive ends to talk about, and we'll talk about one right now, Daniel Norman, a defensive end from Florida. He's probably almost 6'5", 230, huge frame, huge wingspan. Miami and UCLA look like the main threats, but ever since OU made their offer, which was one of those naggy offers in the April timeframe, OU's made a huge push. He could easily be 6. He looks like he's the same height as Miguel Chavis, which puts him right around 6'5". So he looks like he could be 6'4.5", 6'5", 250, 255 pounds just easily. He's got a huge lean frame. Then the last defensive end from Florida to talk about is the highest rated one. It's Jake Krull, 6'3", 6'4", 230 pounds from IMG, originally from Orlando. Lafayette's also from the Orlando area. He's the highest rated kid visiting. He's a near 5-star. Ohio State's been making a move. UF is making a push right now. But he's been to Norman like 6 times in the last 12 months. I find it hard to believe that OU isn't going to make a real push this weekend and maybe grab back a lead that they had previously. The only question on Krul is the time frame and when he might make a decision. So that's something to watch. He might push out his decision until later. We got some wide receivers visiting. The first one, the highest rated guy, is Jordan Clay from San Antonio. He's around 6'3", 190 pounds. Top 100, top 50, depending upon what ranking system you want to use. Baylor and Colorado looked like the main competition, with Baylor having been the most consistent threat. OU's been after Jordan Clay for months. They've got the final shot. I think there's a distinct possibility Emmett Jones wins this battle this weekend. I wouldn't put him on a commit watch, but I do think OU could generate a lead that would allow them to get his verbal commitment down the road. Then we have Zach Turner from Duncanville. He's a wide receiver, tight end, so he's either a big wide receiver or a flex tight end. And OU, if they get Tyler Ruxer, will have 2 legit tight ends. So I'm not sure that tight end will be his fit down the road, but you never know. He's got he's like 6'3", 210. He has great film from last year. Looks like OU had a lead at one point. Miami's made a late push. The decision timeline for him is going to be interesting, as well as what OU decides to do at wide receiver. How many big wide receivers do they want? How many speed athlete types do they want? So we'll see where Zach Turner is coming out of this, knowing that OU has probably filled their tight end spots. In terms of offensive linemen, there's only one guy visiting. It's Devon Robinson, the offensive guard from the Houston area. He's a 3-star, but his junior film's really, it's excellent. It wouldn't shock me if he's not a composite 4 if he gets evaluated. So after Robeson got the offer in April, and after he got the OU offer, he canceled a previous visit and immediately set up the OU visit for the BBQU weekend. This is trending towards the Sooners, like where OU is with Devon. And again, I think there's a high upside to his ceiling. He's 6'3", 320, just a mauling, physical inside guard that you could see Bill Bedenbaugh developing into a high-end player. On the other side of the ball, at defensive tackle, we have Taj Overton, 6'3", 275 territory. He's in the top 250 composite, really. Ole Miss and OSU seem to be the main competition. An Ole Miss recruiting site guy just put in a forecast for Taj Overton. I think Taj is probably on commit watch this weekend. It wouldn't shock me if he made the move. He's been to Norman countless times over the last 12 months. I think it would be good for him to grab a spot in the class if he wants to. So that's the one defensive tackle that's confirmed going to be on campus. And at linebacker, we have Bo Jandro, Nico's brother. Oregon and Texas are the main opposition in this recruiting battle. He has a final 3 of OU, Oregon, and Texas. That doesn't really fit with his 3-star ranking. Josh McCuistion on the Sooner Scoop podcast said that he's heard that, lots of folks think that Jandro might be the best middle linebacker on the West Coast. He's 6'1", 210. You'd have to think OU has a big advantage with his twin brother Nico having committed. So he's another player that I think you could put on commit watch for this weekend. Then at the safety position, we have 2 guys. We have Braden Presley from Broken Arrow, 6'2", 180 pounds, 190 pounds. His two brothers went to OSU. One of them transferred to Tulsa. One of them had a lot of success at OSU. It's kind of an OSU family. Does the bigger, younger brother decide to break the trend and choose OU? I think if he does, he's going to pull the trigger quickly. Otherwise, I think this trend's back to OSU just because of all the family connections, etc. Then OU has Jacob Eberhardt visiting from Missouri. He's like 6'3", 205 pounds, top 250 4-star. And again, this would be a Missouri battle. Although it looks like Eberhardt was scheduled to take a Bama visit midweek. I don't know if that happened or not. OU's been trending up with Eberhardt. They kind of were in the background for a bit and then have moved into the forefront. I think Brandon Hall does a great job recruiting safeties. This would, Nico Jandra is a cheetah. So if you want a true safety in this class, I think Jacob Eberhardt would be a good addition. So we'll see what happens there. So I skipped a couple of names, and I'll get to that in just one sec. So there are three players who I have in kind of status uncertain. You should prepare yourself to hear that these guys didn't make it to Norman. They may still, but I think their status is up in the air. The first one is Craig Dandridge. He's already set up his commitment date of 6/26. This smells like a UGA commitment is about to happen. And I could see OU deciding, let's not bring him in for a visit if that's the case. Or OU could just say, well, let's just put our full recruiting battle out there. Let's give Emmett Jones a chance. UGA doesn't do a good job with wide receiver production or development. They do everything else great, but the wide receiver black hole at UGA is pretty, other than Ladd McConkey, is pretty obvious. They've tried again to hit the portal and see if they can fix that with some high-rated guys from the portal. We'll see. But it looks like I would say 50-50 on Dandridge. Staying at the wide receiver position, we know Daniel Odom from California was heavily connected to Jaden O'Neal, and that was maybe his anchor point to the Sooners. That's disappeared. Does Odom want to follow O'Neal to wherever he goes? And FSU is the direction that has the most sort of smoke or rumors to it. He also visited Washington. Washington has a lot of recruiting momentum right now on the West Coast. Between FSU and Washington, and playing for Jed Fish at Washington, I choose Washington over going to Tallahassee and being in the Gus Malzahn offense, which, again, is not known for producing wide receivers at all. So we'll see if Daniel visits or if OU pushes that off and says, hey, why don't you come visit officially in the fall, come out for a game? And that way they've got some time to let Odom dwell on what's gone on with Jaden O'Neal and decide if he wants to be part of the class or if he wants to decommit and go elsewhere. Then the last status uncertain guy, kind of a blow here if he does not show up, just from a prestige standpoint. But Valdon Sone, the big defensive tackle from Sweden, who's at a prep school in Virginia. He's a top 50 4-star, according to one service. Apparently, he had some family issues going on, and he had to return to Sweden in the first part of June. I'm not exactly sure if he's even back in the United States, but regardless, it blew up his visit schedule. So I think several visits he wanted to take didn't happen. And I think his timeline is kind of blown up because he's not going to get to take the visits he wanted to because, as I said, this is the last weekend for visits until September. So I think he might either cancel on OU or OU might push him off and try and get him back on campus this fall. I think he's probably going to take several visits in the fall, and maybe OU wants to wait and use their official visit ammo closer to a decision time, and see where they are. So I think those three guys, don't be disappointed if they don't show up this weekend. I think there's legitimate reasons why OU would push off all three visits. So that's your weekend preview. Just to recap, just a quick recap, the guys I would put on commit watch would be Devon Robinson, Taj Overton, Bo Jandro, and maybe DeAnthony Lafayette. The guys I think OU can separate and could look for a commitment maybe in the July timeframe would probably be Zach Turner, Jordan Clay, Daniel Norman. I think OU's probably looking at a longer battle for Jake Krull and maybe Jacob Eberhardt. And Braden Presley, I'm just not sure what to do with the OSU family influence there, the OSU history. I would be stunned if he committed over the weekend to the Sooners. So I think that's kind of the scorecard of where things are. So thanks everyone for listening. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Don't forget to leave a rating. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. And I will do a weekend wrap up on either Monday or Tuesday, depending upon the relative noise about when commitments are going to fall. So expect an update from me then. If something happened positively on Bo Bentley, I might do just a quick short pod if something broke on the quarterback side of things. So thanks everyone. Please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 or just go to patreon.com, search for Sooners360. There's more recruiting content on there, and that Patreon account keeps this podcast free. So if you like listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, please consider subscribing to the Patreon site. Like I said, it's a free trial, and it helps me keep this podcast going. So we'll be back early next week with a recap of what's hopefully a very productive recruiting weekend for the Sooners.